the whole thing's really just a big fever dream. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Faith and thank you so much for watching. Today is episode 3 in my series where we compare books to their film or TV show adaptations, and we are doing Alice in Wonderland. And this isn't comparing to the live actions, this is comparing to the 1951 cartoon. So far in the series, I've done A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Jurassic Park, and in both of those videos, I kind of had to skip a lot of the story just because there are so many things to cover. I've kind of just had to pick random parts I wanted to touch on, but because of how short Alice in Wonderland is, I'll be able to walk you through pretty much the entire story and just go back and forth between the book and the movie. I'm saying this before I filmed or edited this, so I don't know if that's going to be confusing. I really hope it's not. I'm sorry if it is. Obviously, I won't be able to cover every single detail, but because of how short it is, I'll be able to cover a lot more of the story. I think this goes without saying, but obviously there will be Alice in Wonderland spoilers, as well as a couple spoilers for the second book, which is Through the Looking Glass. Let's get into it. The book and the movie actually start off fairly similar. The only real difference at the very beginning is the pacing. In the book, Alice is literally falling down the rabbit hole, I think on page 1, if not page 2. It starts off with her daydreaming and pretty much immediately spotting the white rabbit and following him down the rabbit hole, where she falls very slowly to the bottom. But in the movie, we see her studying with, I believe it's her sister, and then she's talking to her cat and daydreaming, and then she sings a whole song, and then she spots the white rabbit and follows him down the rabbit hole, and again she follows it very slowly until she hits the bottom, and she follows the white rabbit into this really big room with this really teeny tiny door. And the doorknob starts talking to her, and she's like, "It's impossible, I can't get through." And he's like, "It's not impossible, it's impassable." Yeah, I didn't write the joke, guys. And that's when she spots the drink me potion, and she drinks it and she gets super tiny, but she's too tiny, so she has to eat the cake that says eat me, and then she gets way too big and she literally cries a river. However, in the book, when she gets to the bottom of the rabbit hole, she finds herself in a hallway with a ton of doors, all kinds of different shapes and sizes, and she finds the key to a door and she unlocks it and she sees a garden. And stepping away from the storyline real quick, I feel like this is the best place to say it. In the movie, the thing that carries her from scene to scene is her trying to follow the white rabbit, but in the book, it's her trying to get back to this garden. Back to the storyline. In the book, there's no talking doorknobs, but she does still find the drink me potion, and she drinks it, gets way too small. She eats the cake, gets way too big, cries herself a river. In the book, to get small again, she fans herself with the white rabbit's fan, and then the hallway kind of just evaporates to my understanding, but then she's still stuck in her flood of tears, but she's no longer stuck in the hallway. But in the movie, she drinks the drink me potion again, shrinks, and then the doorknob like sucks her through the doorknob while she's stuck in the bottle that's like floating on top of her flood of tears. From this point on, both the book and the movie are split into pretty distinct sequences. They're just kind of not fully accurate to each other. In the movie, after she is sucked out from the flood, all these creatures keep passing her and she keeps begging them for help, and she finds the dodo and he's standing in a circle singing a song while a bunch of creatures are walking in a circle around him, and he's like, "This is the best way to dry off, trust me." As they're still getting slammed with waves. The dude's kind of just insane, I think. Alice finds herself in that circle of creatures, and obviously she doesn't get dry because they're still getting hit by the waves. She eventually gets out of the flood of tears and continues on to follow the white rabbit, and she stumbles upon Tweedledee and Tweedledum. So we don't get too far ahead in the movie, let's go back to the book. In the book, again, the hallway kind of just disappears, but she's still in that flood of tears. She finds the mouse. She has some conversation with the mouse. She either gets out of the water and then meets the dodo, or she meets the dodo while she's still in the water. That part, honestly, I can't fully remember, but she does meet the dodo right after this, so kind of in the same timeline as the movie. So Alice finds herself with the dodo and a ton of creatures, and the dodo suggests that they all do a race to dry off, but Alice kind of gets into this fight with the creatures, but then it's kind of resolved because Alice does run the race with them. Honestly, the entire book and movie is just like a whole big fever dream, so honestly, things just don't really make sense in either one of them. But after the dodo race, she finds herself at the white rabbit's house. Now we're gonna jump back to the movie after she gets herself out of the flood of tears. In the movie, there's an extra sequence between the dodo and the white rabbit's house, and that would be her meeting Tweedledee and Tweedledum and them telling her the story of the walrus and the oysters. That does not happen in the Alice in Wonderland book. That happens in book 2, Through the Looking Glass. Tweedledee and Tweedledum are not in the first book at all. So that entire sequence pretty much was just added for the movie. In the movie, after her encounter with Tweedledee and Tweedledum, she finds herself at the white rabbit's house. The white rabbit is rushing out of his house and tells her to go find his gloves. So she goes in the house, but then she finds the cake and it says eat me, so she eats it, and then she turns really big and it freaks the rabbit out, and he's like, "Monster, monster," and her arms are outside the windows, her legs are outside the front door, and then the dodo shows up and is kind of trying to help, but not really. He's like acting like he's helping, but he's not really helping, and then the lizard shows up and they try to get the lizard up the chimney, But that doesn't work, so the dodo's like, we gotta burn the house down. But then Alice, taking things into her own hand, grabs a carrot from the garden, eats it, and then she turns small again. In the book, there's no lizard in that sequence, and I'm also pretty sure that the dodo's not in it either. It's kind of the same with the rabbit asking her to go get something, and she goes in the house, she gets really big, but then it's actually the rabbit that says, let's burn the house down, because they think that she's some big monster. And there's like a group of creatures in the forest throwing rocks at her, but the rocks turn to cake, and then she eats the cake and she shrinks. Again, the whole thing's really just a big fever dream. This next part in the movie and the book is completely different. In the movie, after the whole monster in the house thing, she shrinks, but she's way too small, and she's still trying to follow the white rabbit, and she follows him into this like flower field, and the flowers talk to her and they sing a little song, and then they chase her out because they're like, oh, you're a weed. And then she runs away and finds the caterpillar. In the book, there's no flowers, but she still finds herself too small, but she stumbles on a puppy, but since she's so small, she's kind of scared of it, so she throws a stick and it goes away. And then she stumbles upon the caterpillar. The caterpillar part is very similar in both the movie and the book. In the movie, the caterpillar makes her recite a poem, and then he's like, oh, you're doing it wrong, and then he tells a different poem, and then they get into a little argument, and he turns into a butterfly. And as she's like flying away, she's like, wait, like help me, I need to turn big. And then he says that the mushroom, one side makes you turn bigger, one side makes you turn smaller. And she takes a bite of one side of the mushroom, and she grows really, 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 really big, and she grows into a tree where there's a bird, and the bird freaks out thinking that she's a snake. The snake part makes no sense in the movie because she doesn't resemble a snake at all. But honestly, it does make sense in the book. In the book, when she stumbles upon the caterpillar, he still makes her recite a poem, and it's just a different poem, and I'm pretty sure that it's also longer. There's still a whole mushroom thing. One side makes you bigger, one side makes you smaller. She eats it, it makes her bigger, but it only makes her neck bigger, so she's got like a really long neck like a giraffe, and then the bird thinks she's a snake, and so that does make sense. I try to block the caterpillar part out because honestly, the caterpillar just really freaks me out. So yeah, after the caterpillar part, there is a sequence in the book that doesn't happen in the movie. Alice finds herself at the house of the Duchess, where the Duchess has a baby, and also the Cheshire Cat is there, and then I think someone else as well. I'm pretty sure it's like their chef or something like that. But the Duchess doesn't really like Alice, so of course she says, off with her head. But the chef, or whoever it wasn't really paying attention, so that kind of just didn't happen. And then Alice gets the baby and starts nursing it outside, but then the baby turns into a pig, and she like lets it go, and then she leaves, and then she ends up at the hare's house. In the movie, after the bird accuses her of being a snake, she eats the other side of the mushroom, shrinks again, and then she continues on her way. She stumbles upon this crossing road, and the Cheshire Cat is there, and he's like, this way is the Mad Hare's house, this way is the Mad Hatter's house. If I remember correctly, she goes to the Mad Hatter's house. But it's not just the Hatter there. In both the book and the movie, it is the Hatter, the Hare, and the mouse. In the movie, they're having an unbirthday party, but the unbirthday party is not in the book. The unbirthday party is introduced in Through the Looking Glass, which again is the second Alice in Wonderland book. In the movie, the rabbit shows up and the Mad Hatter is like, oh, your clock is 2 days late, let me fix it for you. He doesn't fix it, obviously it gets super broken. And then the rabbit leaves, and then Alice kind of gives up on following the rabbit. In the book, when Alice shows up to the house, again, they're not having an unbirthday party, they're having a never-ending tea party because I guess the Mad Hatter got into a fight with time, so this was like the punishment for it. At the never-ending tea party, again, we're talking about the book, everyone kind of bombards Alice with a bunch of stories, and that makes her want to leave, so she leaves, and then she finds a doorway in this tree, and she walks through the door, and she finds herself back in the hallway that she was in at the very beginning of the book. And using her own smart mind, even though she's only 7, she's a pretty smart kid in my opinion, she figures out how to get through the doorway that leads to the garden, so she goes to the garden. And the garden is actually the Queen of Hearts estate. In the movie, there's an entire extra sequence between the unbirthday party and her finding the Queen's estate. After she gives up on finding the White Rabbit in the movie, she kind of leaves the tea party and she finds herself lost in these really creepy woods where the Cheshire Cat finds her. And the Cheshire Cat leads her to this maze, which leads her to the Queen's estate. And then very briefly, we get the movie and the book being the same thing, which is as soon as she enters her estate, she notices the 3 playing cards painting the roses red. The Queen of Hearts and the King show up fairly quickly after Alice gets to the estate, and if you remember in the movie, the King is very, 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 very teeny tiny, and he's very meek, kind of, you know, lets the Queen do her thing. But in the book, he is pretty mean. I wouldn't say as mean as the Queen, just because she's pretty evil, it's pretty hard to do that, but he is not a nice person really at all in the book. In the movie, when the Queen shows up and notices that her roses have been painted red, she's not really a fan of that, and she demands the execution of the 3 cards who did it, and that's when she notices that Alice is there. In the book, that literally does not happen at all. The Queen obviously notices that Alice is at the estate in the book, and in both the book and the movie, they do play croquet with the balls being hedgehogs. And after this, pretty much everything is different between the book and the movie. During the game of croquet, the Cheshire Cat plays a trick on the Queen of Hearts. That does happen in both the book and the movie. But in the movie, the only person who can really see the Cheshire Cat is Alice, whereas in the book, pretty much everybody can see the Cheshire Cat. So in the movie, the Queen thinks that Alice is the one who played the trick on her, so of course she says her iconic line, "Off with her head." But the king is like, no, let's put her on trial. In the book, again, everyone can see the Cheshire Cat, so she knows that it was the cat who did it. So she demands off with his head. And they end up putting the cat on trial. But then they want to call the Duchess up, so they go and get her out of prison because somehow she ended up in prison, even though Alice stumbled upon her in the woods at her house. She's now in prison, I guess. If you remember earlier, I said the Cheshire Cat was in the Duchess's house. That is because apparently the Duchess owned the Cheshire Cat, so that is why they wanted the Duchess to be like brought forward in front of the Queen. So they bring the Duchess out of the prison, but then they can't find the cat, so they just go back to their croquet game. And the Duchess starts talking to Alice, but then the Queen is tired of her, so she's like, "Leave or I will execute you." So the Duchess leaves. And then Alice is introduced to the Griffin and then the Mock Turtle, both of which are not in the movie at all. So she talks to the Griffin and the Mock Turtle for a little bit, but then we're back to the trials. So again, in the book, the Cheshire Cat is the one on trial, but in the movie, it is Alice who is on trial. In the movie, while Alice is on trial, she still has bits of the mushroom, if you remember that from the caterpillar sequence. So she eats it to grow really big, and she starts arguing with the Queen, and because she's so tall, she's not scared of her. But then the king is like, "You have to leave because you're over a mile high, so you're not allowed to be here," or something. But then Alice kind of doesn't accept that and is trying to defend herself still, but then she shrinks. And of course, now that she's tiny, the Queen's not scared of her, so she gets literally basically everybody in Wonderland to chase Alice away, and she kind of goes backwards from where she was in the story. So for example, she runs through the Queen's estate, and then she's running through the tea party, and then I think she runs through the flower garden that she was in, and then she finds herself in the flood, and then she finds herself back to the doorknob. And then when she's at the doorknob shows her through the keyhole that Alice is actually sitting under the tree, not in Wonderland, sleeping. And then Alice pretty much wakes up, again, not in Wonderland. In the book, again, that entire thing is completely different. The trial is for the Cheshire Cat, and Alice is just watching the trial happen. Like in the movie, she does get really big, and then I think she starts like arguing with some of the creatures that are also watching the trial, but that's kind of irrelevant. But then she gets called up as a witness, and the king again says, "You're a mile high, you have to leave." And while she's really big, she starts knocking down the playing cards, which are pretty much just the Queen guards, and while she's doing that, she wakes up and there are leaves falling on her face. In the book, the sisters there, honestly, I don't really remember their age difference. All I know is that Alice is 7 in the book, but the sister is there and she reveals that she had the same dream as Alice. And then the book pretty much ends. So I don't know what the significance of saying that was. But in the movie, after Alice wakes up under the tree, the sister shows up, doesn't say she had the same dream. She just kind of takes Alice and then they go back home. And that is the end of the movie. So that is Alice in Wonderland. That was a lot of information. I know in my other videos I'm not able to cover that much just because there's a lot more of story to cover. I really tried my best with this one to cover the entire thing. And honestly guys, I think I did pretty good covering all of it. I covered the entire storyline and touched on basically everything except for some smaller details. In future videos in this series, I probably won't be able to cover that much. Again, it was pretty much just because of how short the story and the movie are, but who knows. Next week will be my August reading wrap up, and so far I have read 10 books this month, and it's going to be at least 12, and I have never in my entire life read that many books in 1 month, and honestly, I probably will never do it again. 3 of those books were read in 1 single day, so be sure to check that out next week. And my series where I compare books to their film or TV show adaptations comes out the last Sunday of every month. And at this point, I don't have a book or movie picked out for September, so feel free to leave a request in the comments. If I don't get to it in September, I will for sure get to it at some point in the future. So I think that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you've all had a fantastic summer. For those of you back in school, I hope your school year goes well. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow my Insta, which is in the description for more bookish content. Love you guys. Bye!